Good morning. Welcome to Koil Baker.
Good morning.
The rabbi, the priest, and the imam got together having a conversation. And they said, people come to us for confessions. Not that in Jewish tradition you confess to humans, but that's how the joke goes. And they tell us all the things that they've done, and yet we don't have anyone to go to confess our misdeeds. Maybe all three of us now, we could share with each other our shortcomings and achieve forgiveness. So the priest says, I have a problem with money. And sometimes I take from the collection box, I take some of the money, and, I can't contain myself. They listen, they say, forgiven. Then the imam says, Ramadan fasting, it's very difficult for me. And when no one's watching, I grab some meat, some wine. I sneak some food during this month of Ramadan. They look at him and they say, forgiven. The rabbi says, I have a weakness too. I can't keep a secret. People say things to me and I want to tell everyone. Balaam, who is really the main character of our parsha, not so much Balak, who hired him, but Balaam was the one who knew better. Balaam was the one who actually had the ability to curse, or at least he thought he did. Balaam was the person who's going to bring the destruction over the Jewish people. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos talks about this and tells us that, I want to do the Mishnah inside, Kol mi sheyesh bei shleisha dvarim halalu, anyone who has these three things, he is from the Talmidim of Avram Avinu. If you have these three qualities, these three characteristics, these three traits, you should know you're a disciple of Avram. What are these? And if you have three other ones, then you are a disciple of Balaam HaRasha, the wicked Balaam. So there's different personalities, there's different modes of behavior, and look at yourself, and if you have these three, you're Avram's disciple. If you have the other three, you are following in the ways of Balaam the wicked. What are these three? So if you're a Talmud of Avram Avinu, you have ayin toiva, which means a good eye, the ruach nimucha, a humble spirit, the nefesh shvala, and a meek soul. Okay? We'll explain. But if you have these, a good eye, a humble spirit, and a meek soul, that's Avram Avinu's mode of behavior. That's his model. But the disciples of Balaam, the way they behave, they have the opposite. Ayin ra'ah, the ruach gvaya, the nefesh rechava. Which means an evil eye, an arrogant spirit, and a greedy soul. Okay, that's the way that Balaam behaves. Where do you see this in the behavior of Avram Avinu? Where do you see that he had a good eye? So we know that he was very happy with what he had. He was sameach bechalkei. He was glad with what he had. And he also helped others and was happy that other people should also benefit. For example, when he won over the war for the 4 kings versus the 5 kings, the king of Sodom offered him some of the loot. Take all of the loot that we get from winning the war. Take it. You could have it as a payment. Avram Avinu said, I don't need anything. I'm not looking not a needle, not a shoelace. Okay? I don't need anything that's yours. In other words, not only am I happy with what I have, I'm happy that you should have. I'm glad that you should have. Okay, he's not looking
for his soldiers, right?
He leaves everything. The point that you see from here is that ayin tova, he has a good eye. He's happy with what he has. He's happy that other people should have. It's not a competition who could earn more. That's Avram Avinu's method. That's his way of behaving. Exactly. Very good. Beautiful. The ruach nemucha, what does it mean to have a humble spirit? So you find by Avram Avinu, he didn't take all the credit for himself. Okay? He didn't say, I'm the greatest, and I'm the only one that's deserving, and everyone else, who cares what happens to them? Either you're like me, either you're as good as me, and so on. He was humble. Where do you find this? You find this when it comes to Sodom. he heard that Sodom is going to be destroyed, he didn't say good riddance. That's great, bad people. And he knew exactly what's going on because he dealt with the travelers that were heading in that direction. The whole reason why he moved to the desert and set up his guest house or his oasis over there was because it was a metropolis. It was on the way. People were going to Stem and Amera. He knew their behaviors. Yet when he heard that Hashem wants to destroy them, he gets up and he shouts and prays and begs Hashem not to do it.
Oh, it's bad for business.
He wasn't earning any money off that. Just an opportunity to.
I understand, but after
Yeah.
it was destroyed, no one was going there.
Okay, fine, but he wasn't making money. So
No, I understand, but for making,
right, for helping people.
yeah.
Okay, but the point is that he had a ruach nemucha, right? He had a humble spirit. It's not just about me, and let's daven for someone else, and let's try to see a way that maybe Hashem could do it. That's number two. And the nefesh shveila, a weak soul, Avraham Avinu was modest. He was happy with what he had, and he controlled his lusts and his desires. He wasn't looking, per se, to do more, to achieve even more. He was happy, and it's not about not looking to achieve more, but he was content. Okay, it's called let's use the word humble and modest. Wasn't looking for the maximum pleasure in life and the most, he was refined.
Mabsut.
Yeah, he was refined. And what do we mean by that? So if you can pick up your phones because it's shaking the table on the video, just hold it in your pocket or something. Thank you. The idea of where you see that he was a meek soul, where do you see this? Nefesh shvela. You see this in when he goes to Mitzrayim and he realizes, he tells Sarah, now I see that you're pretty. Okay. He was a refined person. And when it came to going to Mitzrayim and he's going to have to meet up with other people, and the Egyptians are very immoral, and there's a threat to his wife's safety, then he notices, she's actually very pretty. But up until that point, he was a little bit more focused on the finer things in life in a positive way. Okay? He was refined. He was proper. Okay, he wasn't indulgent in just pleasure seeking. That's Avraham Avinu's way. Balaam is the exact opposite in all these three things. Where do you find ayin ra? He has an evil eye. He was a person that he could not handle success of anyone else. He had no problem to curse an entire nation. Why? Because Moshe is too successful. I got to break this thing. Again, he had nothing to do with us. We weren't a threat to him. We weren't crossing into his area. We weren't taking any power, money, territory, nothing. But it bothered him that someone else is successful. The Jews are on top of the world. Moshe stood up against F.R.E.E, took us out of Egypt, split the sea, leading us in the desert. He can't handle it. Why? It changes nothing in your life. That's an ayin ra. So Avraham Avinu is happy not only with what he has, but that someone else should have good as well. And when the king offers him loot after he wins the war, he says, no, keep it for your men or whatever. Balaam is destroying a nation because Moshe is too successful. Evil eye. Secondly, ruach gevaya. He has a arrogant spirit. Okay, he's proud in the wrong way. He's a big shot. He talks about himself in the third person. Nu'um shemea imre'el kel, the one that hears the speaking of Hashem and knows the supernal knowledge. Yeah, this whole idea is you think you're so great. Well, Avraham Avinu is humble, and when he finds out that another nation is being destroyed, he tries to help them, and he sees the value of another person. He wants to give them another chance. He's not the greatest. Balaam looks and says, who cares about them? Right? He talks about himself in third person. I'm the greatest. No one else matters. And nefesh rechava, I'm going to have the English translation for nefesh rechava, a greedy soul. It's not just greedy that you want to get more, but you're indulgent. And as a result of that, you're corrupted in your value system. And you're just immoral. And you're susceptible to doing terrible things. That's why after the whole story, without getting into the details right now, where he tried to curse the Jewish people multiple times and it didn't work, what did he do? He gives Balak an idea. He says, the Eibishter, the God of the Jews, he hates immorality, promiscuity. He hates this behavior. So if you could get somehow the Jews to sin with the daughters of Moab, you got them. You don't need any cursing. You don't need any battles. You'll win. Who does that? Here's a guy goes and he gives an idea to get the daughters of Moab to come and to sin with them. That's the opposite of Avraham Avinu. He didn't even realize that his wife was pretty until it was important to know, because you're going to Egypt. You got to be careful to that extent. And Balaam is the opposite. All he thinks about is that stuff. And when it comes to strategy of war or a strategy of mass destruction for the Jewish people, and cursing doesn't work, he has another idea at the top of his mind. Why don't you get the girls? What's going on over here? So the Mishnah tells us that if you are from the students of Avraham Avinu, that you have a good eye, you have a humble spirit, and you have a meek soul. Let's just say you're refined. If you're from the disciples of Balaam, that's the exact opposite. You can't handle someone else's happiness and success. It bothers you. Okay? You are arrogant. It's all about you. There's no room for anyone else. And low, immoral. Your soul is into the wrong stuff. Now, question is how? We know that Balaam was a prophet, and he had a connection with the divine. Okay, he knew some very deep concepts, if you will. He was able to figure out the moment that Hashem is upset. Who knows when Hashem is upset? People don't have that knowledge, information. Here's a prophet. It wasn't once in a while Hashem spoke to him in a dream. He had the ability to sense certain levels of spirituality. That means he had, let's just say he was big. Okay? And how is it possible? Practice what you preach. It's the famous thing that hopefully everyone does, right? You say something, you demand something, you're all about the greatness or whatever, and you yourself in your own life, you don't do it. You have to do it, right? So Balaam knows everything. He talks about prophecies and whatever else, and in his own life, he has a wicked, evil eye. He's arrogant and low. Low, I mean immoral. So you have all these things in a person who you would think is so spiritually refined. He's a prophet. How could you have both of these things together? Not only that, Balaam was on the level, at least, of Moshe Rabbeinu. How do we know? Because in the end of the Torah, when it talks about Moshe's passing, Torah says, Moshe, there has never been a prophet among the Jewish people like Moshe, ever again. And the commentaries say, what do you mean among the Jews? Somewhere else there was? What are you implying here? There has never been such a great prophet among the Jews like Moshe. And the Chazal tells us, the Medrash tells us, that yes, there was one. Balaam, not among the Jews, there's a non-Jewish prophet, but he was before, same time. But to say that there has never been a prophet like Moshe, among the Jews there hasn't been. But among the non-Jews there was somebody. That was Balaam. Why did Hashem do that? So we know, I mentioned this yesterday, we know that Hashem didn't want the nations of the world to come to and complain and say, look, the Jewish people are doing the right thing. They're behaving properly. And you're rewarding them. And you're disappointed with us that we're idol worshipers or whatever else we're doing that's inappropriate. Well, it's not fair. You gave them prophets. Every time they mess up, he puts them into place. He gives them inspiration. He teaches them. He helps them. If we would have prophets, say the nations, we would also behave. So Hashem comes and says, yes, you did have prophets. I gave you a prophet, Balaam, and he was on par with Moshe's level of prophecy. Not with his behavior, not with his personality, not with his holiness, but his accessibility and his level of prophecy was there. So our question today is, how is it possible to have that spirituality, that holiness, and yet be the opposite of Avraham Avinu? Evil eye, arrogant, lowly soul in the sense of immoral. How do these things go together? And besides, shouldn't your knowledge impact your action? If you know something, you know the greatness of something, okay? You know the importance, qualities, you'll learn it. Should it not impact the way you behave? Balaam knows so much. He's in tune with the divine, and yet in his behavior, it's night and day. There's a story which brings out this idea. There once was a very wealthy man. And this wealthy person had a daughter, and he searched out the best groom for his daughter to marry. And he finally found someone, and he promised him he could study Torah for the rest of his life. He's going to support him. It's going to be a great life. And, she didn't know him too well. They maybe met a couple times before the wedding. They get married, and this husband and his new wife, they got into a fight. And the husband couldn't handle it. He ran away from home. Just one morning, he was gone. Terrible tragedy. She can't get married because she's married. She can't get a divorce because he's gone. No one knows where he is. And they're sending out people and trying to find out, and nothing. And in this wealthy person's house, it's tragic. He's sending out, messages. If you want to come back, they don't know where he is. But if anyone hears him and hears of him and tells him that if he comes and gives a divorce to my daughter, I'll give him extra money. If he wants to come back and make up, he can continue to live with us. Just don't leave her hanging. She's a aguna. She's chained down. She can't marry now because she has a husband. She's a married woman. Anyway, one day, a guy appears in town. And he says, I am the husband. Okay, he looks like him. Comes home. And everyone's so happy the guy showed up. What happened to you? He said, listen, it was a bad fight, but I got over it. And please give me another chance. And they come in, and he's talking to his wife, who he only met a few times. They were recently married. And she's a little bit suspicious. Is it the same guy? I mean, it could be the same guy, but something is off. And she knew their life dealings, the little bit that they lived together. He knew about her. Like, he was saying the right stuff. Where they lived, what they've done together, certain experiences they had. But at the same time, she was a little bit unsure. Is this him or not? She told her father, I'm not sure. Like, I think it's my husband. He says he's my husband, but maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Something's off. So this father of this wealthy father of this daughter, he goes to the rabbi and says, tell me, we have this issue. My son-in-law supposedly showed up. I think it's him. My daughter thinks it's him, but she says there's a little touch of suspicion here. It may not be him. So he says, you know what? Friday night before you go to shul, tell this son-in-law of yours, meet me in shul at my table. I'll see you later. Go ahead, I'm coming. So he did. Comes to shul, and he sees that this guy is not there. He's sitting in the corner somewhere. He's lost. He's walking around. He's not at his place. So he grabs him and he says, you're not my son-in-law, are you? He says, what do you mean? And they start to hit him a little bit. And he confesses. Huh?
A little bit.
And he confesses. And he says, you're right. I'm not. I met your son-in-law in some inn. We're two beggars. We're talking. He told me his story. He told me everything about his wife. Everything about your family, where you live. Yeah. And I decided, look, I'll come back and I'll say I'm the husband. Either I'll marry her and I'll have a wealthy life, or I'll demand a divorce on condition that they pay me big money. And I got all the information. And they weren't married for long, and they didn't know each other before the marriage more than a couple times. So I could wing it. Okay, obviously, they chased him away. But this wealthy man goes to the rabbi and says, how did you know? It was a brilliant idea. I mean, how did you know to tell him to come to shul, follow my place? He said, I'll tell you. A guy that's capable of such immoral behavior, to go and fake being someone's husband and marry and be with a married woman, he, trust me, did not ask anything about the shul or where he davens or what place he davens. He would never think of that. His mind is in the wrong place. He's not even, wondering where do they daven. That's where you'll get him in the religious things. Okay, so Balaam, his mind is in the right place, right? He is someone who has prophecy, the level of Moshe. How come he can't behave properly? How come he is such a evil eye and so on? So, if we look a little bit at who Amalek was, we could learn a little bit about Balaam's problem. Why? Because Balaam and Amalek come from the same stock. It says, "Vayave Amalek came." Where did he come from? He came from Balaam. He was hanging out with Balaam. If you write the word Balaam on one line and you write Amalek under it, write Amalek first, actually, Amalek, Balaam, and then you take the first half of the words and the second half, they both will spell Amalek.
Yes.
Balaam, they both spell Balaam. They're similar, okay? And the Rebbe tells us a lot about Amalek and Chassidus in general, but Amalek's issue, okay? People don't change from what they know. They change from what they do. You could have a lot of information, you could do a lot of great things, and you can know a lot of high ideas, but if you're not going to try to bring it into action, it will not have any bearing on you, possibly, okay? A person could learn a lot, could be a professor in ethics, immorality, and in their own life, they're not behaving that way. If you get up in the morning, you say Meidani prayer, you gis nagovas, you go to shul, you do mitzvahs, then your knowledge flows into your heart, it flows into your actions, it becomes who you are. But if you keep it separate, and what you know and what you do are two separate things, it won't impact it. It won't flow. The Chinuch says it like this, the Sefer HaChinuch. Acharei hamaisim nimshachem ha'alevavis. Okay? Or acharei ha'pa'ulos nimshachem ha'alevavis. After your actions, your heart follows. Your heart flows. If you try to be kind, if you try to do proper things, if you behave appropriately, then your heart starts to feel that way. You connect with it more. But just learning about morality without an intent to behave that way runs the risk of it not impacting you. Look at the word Amalek. Amalek is from the same word as Melika. There was a certain process of a korban, of a sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash, which was taking a bird and doing Melika. Melika means you take your nail of your finger, your thumb, and you break the neck. Okay, the way that they slaughtered the animal was with Melika. You're separating the neck from the rest of the body. That's how it was slaughtered. Now, in life, there's also a concept of a melika, where you separate the head from the rest of the body. The head, the knowledge, understands that there's a God. And in Balaam's context, he knew that God is correct. And he understood spirituality and prophecy. But he separated his head from his body. What I know is great. What I do is something else. Right? The concept that I sense is very moral, ethical, and spiritual, but it's separate from my behavior. I think they say it about Aristotle, that he once gave a big lecture about morality and ethics and whatever else. And one of his students came to his house afterwards, a couple hours later, and he found him engaged in immorality. And he said, "Professor, you just said something, a beautiful lecture for 90 minutes about the importance and the greatness and the value of morality." And he says, "That was professor. This is citizen." Amalek is the idea of separating, and that was Balaam's problem, the head from the body. There's the concept, there's the knowledge. Yedei das elyon, it says. He knew the opinion, the idea of the supernal one. He connected, he understood Hashem. He knew when he's angry, he was able to sense that. But in his behavior, it had no bearing whatsoever. And this is a lesson. Obviously, we're not like Balaam. We're trying to be students of Avraham Avinu. But we have to remember that ayin tova is not just a concept of having a good eye. It's training ourselves to feel that way. it's working on ourselves to actually do that. We need to do actions. And very often, a Yetzer Hara, or even inclination, tells us that you're not holding there yet. You're not really on that level. Listen, first connect, understand it, feel it, then you'll do it. And Torah says the other way around. You could remain with the ideas, and it'll never lead to action. You have to go and do action. Do something, even if it's a small move, even if you have to force yourself, even if you're not connecting with it, you're not in the mood, but do it. And after doing it, it'll start to snowball, and you'll feel it more. You'll want to do it more. You'll connect with it more. Thank you for joining. Those that are watching on live or replay, hit the subscribe button, share the
Can
video.
you repeat the שלושת המידות של בלעם?
עין רע, נפש, רוח גבויה, ונפש רחבה.
It's opposite.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Balaam did that Elyon.
Yeah.
Okay? So the question to us,